while the First Nations Fisheries Council was formed to help build structure and process for First Nations to advance their interests to government, both at the federal and provincial scale, and help them to build a coherent and cohesive voice on the issues that are priorities. A lot of times while you're working on that kind of conversation, that becomes a really full-time job, understanding the mechanics of government and how fisheries management and allocations are arrived at, and the different species and the nations. That's a really complex job in itself. But we recognized that there was another avenue that First Nations needed to develop their own source revenues. And we needed to build a way to collect that kind of revenue streams, build our own source revenues. And also, we were being approached by a lot of corporations and organizations that wanted to work with First Nations, but weren't really familiar with how to do that. And so the ISF, the Indigenous Stewardship Fund, is really designed to be able to take the energy and dedicate it towards working with partners and other groups that really want to work with First Nations on salmon restoration, environmental protection, water protection, developing water strategies, because it's all connected. And you need to have a different focus and a different conversation than the mechanics of working with government and working with First Nations on policy and legislation. So the ISF really is about changing that conversation and talking about how do we build a granting program? How do we get money in the door from partners and people that want to make contributions towards those things with First Nations? And then how do we develop a mechanism to get that money out the door through a granting and contribution program? So we've really started to develop that over the last year or two. And the first couple of years was really focused on helping to develop the network to do that. Who are the people we want to work with? Who are the like-minded people that want to work with us? So there's two elements to the conversation, but they're linked. So the Fisheries Council identifies 14 geographic regions. They identify representatives from those regions. We call them delegates. They're appointed by those regions. And part of the members of the Fish Council get appointed to be the directors of the Indigenous Stewardship Fund under the Society articles. So they're linked as a mechanism between the two. So the FNFC is the policy and legislative arm, and the ISF is more of the fundraising and charitable arm for those groups that want to work with First Nations.
It's nice to have someone thinking full-time of the fundraising that is needed, and trying to establish a place where money can land for First Nations and that we can direct to First Nations directly. We convene a lot of folks that need the resources that we're looking to provide for them. We often hear as the first priority in any type of endeavor First Nations want to have in fisheries world, resources is the number one priority in terms of trying to entertain any of those kind of activities. So having the ability to point to a sister organization that has the ability to provide or maybe connect the dots to places where we can get resources for those groups is huge, from being able to lift our role for First Nations communities from a place of convening to a place of actually supporting with monetary value. Relying on government funding is never going to be enough. Being able to utilize that money to leverage more money has always been encouraged by the Government of Canada. And so this is just another way of doing that. So being able to have money that isn't attached to mandates of any kind of political campaign will really help in terms of providing some stability and planning abilities for the folks that are coming to our tables. Being able to solidify First Nations vision of undertaking the role of stewardship in their territory is a benefit to not only First Nations, but to all of Canada.